So as we said, we have to be careful about how we name the functions. The next thing is how to add strings and integers. There are different ways of doing that. Let's say I want to declare a variable age. I'm going to call it 19, and I'm going to declare another variable called name, which is John, like that. So what if we want to create a phrase or a sentence with these two? Let's say uh, the name is, then we add the string, the name, then we add up, and the age is, or we say is, age years old. Someone might want to uh, add these things together and display a message. So this should display something like the name is John and is 19 years old. Let's try to run this program. It is not working. It says can only concatenate str, meaning strings, not integers. So the error is coming from here. We cannot concatenate integers with strings. So we have to convert the strings into, we have to convert the integer into a string. There is a built-in function, the RPR. So as described here, this will return the canonical string representation of the object. Just means that it will convert or return something that represents the object in a string format. Now let's run the same program, and now it works. Oops, I'm going to add some space. Now the name is John and is 19 years old. This is a way of doing it, but it's not very convenient using these plus everywhere. We have the f strings or the str format function. Let's start with the f strings. We can write uh, the same statement like that. So the formatted strings, we add the f letter in front of the strings double quotes or single quotes. Then in between, we add placeholders. The name is, then we put in the name of the variable, and is, then we add in the age, years old. So this is a formatted string. It is much more easier to do something like that than what is here, just what we just did before. Same result when we run the program. We can add the variables directly inside the string itself. But there is another ways of doing these things. We can use the str.format function. Sometimes it is required in some of the tasks. So let's do an example. You can take a string, and a string has this method called format, and you can pass in the argument. First, we pass in the name, then the age. Here we have empty curly braces. Each placeholder represents, like in the C program language, when you're using the printf function, will each placeholder will be replaced by the corresponding value. So let's compile and run this code. Let's run this code. So we have the name is John and is 19 years old. There is another details to add on that, and this is you might want to specify the types of the placeholder. For the name, it is a strings, and for the age, the type is an integer. So we use the format for the strings and the integer. So this is also important and good practice, even though the uh, Python can Python can determine what to display. You might want to specify the type explicitly, so maybe you can avoid some errors down the lines. Now we're done with the F strings and the formatted strings. Let's move on modules. I'm going to delete all this code. So now, first of all, what is a module? And let's start with a basic Python file. When you have a Python file, there is a list of symbols in this file, and you can turn it into an executable, meaning that you can run it, or even if you want, you can import this same Python file into another Python file. That way, we consider the files as to be a module because we can import it into other files, so we can use the functions and variables from that modules or from that Python files. I'm going to declare a file here. Let's call it functions.py. And this py file, we're going to declare some basic functions, the add functions to add two variables, two integers, and we're going to create another function called hello world. So this function will call the print function and display hello world. Then what we can do is to import these functions from the function.py file into our main.py file. In this case, the function.py file is considered to be a module. So I'm going to import it, import functions. And once we imported the functions into our main file, we can use the add function to print functions.add. We type in the name of the module, then dot the name of the symbol we want to have access to. In this case, we want to access the add function from within the function file. And here it is. The next thing is, let's say we might want to display the hello world message. Hello world. Oops, this should be a function call. Forgot to add the parentheses. And here it is. Hello world. Ah, yes. The print function displayed none, but the hello world displayed print hello. So we don't want to call print on the hello world function yet. So that's it. When you call the function hello world, we have hello world displayed. Now this is a bit abstract because when you look at this file, you might just need some one or two functions. We can import some specific functions and symbols by using the from, the name of the module, from functions, import, let's say hello world. Then this will be, then from our main file, we can call the hello world function. Or even if you want to import others, you can say import the add function. That way we call the add function like that. And here we have hello world. We've been able to import some symbols, some of the symbols. We might have more than two functions from the function file or from this module. So once you are about to import a file to another file, the imported file is a module. And now there is some other things we want to know about Python files. Let's say we are importing the functions file and we can add some codes that can be executed. Let's say print I am the functions file. So what happens when you try to import the function module into the main file? I'm going to divide the screen. And let's just import the functions and see what will happen. Yeah, you see that when you import the functions, the instruction here, even if it is considered as a module, but the instructions here has been executed. So still, even if you import a module and there are things that are going to happen inside, they're going to be executed, but you might want to prevent that from happening. So we have two things. We can either use a module as a module or a Python file as an executable or just as a library that we can import in other files. So when you are using a module or a Python file as an executable, uh, there is something, a global variable named underscore underscore name. So this global variable has the name of the module when you are importing it. Let's print it and see. So when you're importing a Python file and it's considered to be a module, then this global variable name will be set to the name of the module or the Python file. And if you are trying to execute the Python file, the name variable or the name global variable will be set to underscore underscore main underscore underscore. Let's try to execute the functions files. Yes, it is not an executable. I'm going to turn it into an executable. Uh, Clear the screen. It says syntax error. Yes, here we might want to specify
Is
the
it the
Python.
script?
Yeah, the script, the Python version. Okay, let's try again. Yes, now it's displayed main. But when you import it into another file, it is set to the name of the function. So either you're importing it or you're executing it. When you're executing, when you're using the file as an executable, the name variable is set to main. So that ways we can use the if statement to check if it is a command line execution or if it is just an import like for libraries. But anyways, whatever the code inside a Python file, if you import it or you execute it, the code inside a Py file is still going to be executed. So what we want to do here is to decide when a code should be executed or not. In most of the cases, we just want to make sure that the name, that the underscore underscore name variable is set to underscore underscore main underscore underscore. So that ways we knows that the Python file is being executed, not being imported. So I can say print I am being executed in command line. So now the same file can be used as a module or it can also be used as an executable. So this is how we do it. We first check if the name is set to main. If so, that means we can try to have access to command lines arguments and do certain things. Now, when you run the main function, the code get executed, but this time the main uh, this condition is false because when you're importing a module, you're importing a Python file as a module. This is set to the name of the file. So in our case, in the main.py file, when you import, the name will be set to functions. But let's run the functions files. And here it's still, now it's execute, but this time the global variable name has been set to main. That means it is being executed as command line in the command line. Great. I'm going to close these tabs. So now we know the difference between we have the same Python file and we know when it is being used as a module or when it is being used as a command. Now let's declare, um, write an if statement and say if name is set to main Then we're going to do some things. I'm going to execute and see if everything is going right. Great. Now, for now, we want to be able to access command lines arguments. This is, I think, the last part. We can pass in command lines arguments. Uh, yeah, so we have hello world, hello. So we want to display these from our main file. For that, we use the import. We should import the sys module import sys. So this is a built-in library. Then there is an attribute that the sys module, a symbol called argv, like in a C programming language. We can display it. I'm going to say print sys argv. It is a list, the list of all the parameters that has been passed to the command. So here it is. We have the first element in that list, which is the name of the program itself, the name of the executable, and the others from one. The others are the parameters like hello world. So if we call this function with other things, one, two, three, like that, it still works. Now the question is how to access these elements. We can have access to different two-way elements using um, the square bracket. For example, the first element in the list, it is the same as in the C programming language when we are trying to access different indexes. And here, that's it. Now, let's display the argument that has been passed to our main function. Now we know that this is a list, so it is a sequence. We can use the for loop. So for arg in sys argv prints arg. Oh, I'm going to save it. Oh, yes, there is a problem. I don't know why, but let's see what is happening. I'm going to remove the PyCache folder. Um, so the for loop, for some kind of reason I don't know, is not working. But since we can we can kind of uh, use range. So we have the different indexes and we look through those indexes. Let's try that. For I in range 0, the length, we compute the length of these arguments. Oh, sorry. Going to go back. There was no errors. The only thing is that we didn't pass parameters to our command. So that's why. So for arg in sys.arg, print arg. We can loop through the list. And let's do an example. We're going to make a simple calculator and all these things will be added. sum is equal to 0, and we want to start from 1 instead of 0 because the 0 index is the name of the executable. So we just want to do something like main.py, and we add up numbers. Now, how do we do that? So we define the for loop for I in the range from 1 to the length of the list of arguments. Then we say sum plus we add, then we say we convert the elements at index I in the argument list, then we add it to the sum. Then after that, we print the sum. Or we can even use the formatted strings like that. The sum is, we call the format function, then we pass in the sum. Let's run this program and explain. So that's it. The sum is 435. The first thing is we're executing the main file as the command line in the command line, and we check if the global variable is set to main so that that we're not dealing with an import. Then we set a variable sum to 0, which will hold the total of the sums of the integers. Now we define the for loop. The for loop will start from range 1, from 1 to the length of the list. We wanted to start from 1 because the element at index 0 is the name of the program. So it's not the argument. So we start from 1 to the length of the the length of the argument list. So the length of the argument list, let's say here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that will be 1, 4. But the 4 is not included. So this is something to keep in mind. Then we have the sum. Then we convert the arguments into integers. Then after that, we add it to the sum. We need to do the conversion because if you just add it like that, it will be considered to be a string concatenation because all the arguments are strings. So we first need to convert. Then next, we call the print function. The sum is then format dot format the value sum. So that's it for the command lines. Now, there are certain concepts about sequence or uh, list slicing, how to just get some part of the strings. I'm going to declare a variable s and say hello world, okay? Or just say this is good and call the print function. Now let's execute this program. What we're going to get, we see this is good. Now we can slice the strings. We can say, okay, we want, let's say, we want to get a new string starting from 2, a substring starting from the index 2 till the end of the string. So we say 2, the starting index, and the second uh, elements to provide is the end index. So we say, let's compile or run this code. We displayed is good. It's displaying is good. This is a bit strange, but so let's say the string start from index. Oh yes, so is good is the correct output because 0, 1, 2. So the index 2 is start from the is the I here, then the others part of the strings, which is good. So we have the correct output here. What if we want to stop somewhere else? Let's say we want to display is go. So we say, okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we start from index 5. Then we want to stop at index. This is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we want to stop at 9. But remember, the stop or the end index is not included in the slice. So we're going to add 1 to 9. This will be 10. That way, the 9 will be included, but the index 10 will not be included. So here it is go. And that's it. We also have things like negative index. If you want to access element from starting from the back to the start of the string. For example, we want to, let's say you have a very long message like that, random message, it is great. So instead of starting from the beginning of the string, you might want to start from the end. And that is you. So for starting from the end, we start by using negative numbers. So you say -1. This will be here. So it's like the length of the strings -1. So that will give you the index of the last elements. But here we don't do something, the calculation. We don't say um, the length of the strings -1. It is the same. It displays t, but this is not required. We can just type in -1. So it still gives us t. So that means the length of the strings -1. And we can even use that in order to slice our strings. So we can say, okay, we want to extract this part of the strings is great. So we can start from the back of the string. So here, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So here we can say -8. Then we add a column to say, okay, we're going to extract starting from the index -1, which is here, to the end of the string. So when you compile the code, it will give you is great. So slicing a string is basically like that. You can slice even list. So we have the start index, We have the start index here. We have the end. So you specify the start index or the end index if you want to extract something from within the strings. For example, we can try to extract random. So the start will be, I'm going to count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So the start index will be 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So the end will be 17. But remember, the last, the end, the index at end will not be included to the slice, in the slice. So we wanted to add 1. That will be 18. Now let's run the code. Yes, we have random. Ah, yes, there is a typo, random. So basically, this is how it works. There is another element you can add. For example, you might want to skip, so you can jump over indexes. Let's say we want to start from 0, index 0, to the end of the strings, and we also want to skip one character at a time. We can say 2 here. So at each 2 character, or at each 2 elements, we display. So it says 0, 1, 2. It displays the second one. Now 0, 1, 2. It displays the S like